couple of weeks ago, I took a trip to Frankfurt for a chance to play the first 3 hours of Doom: The Dark Ages. I'm a huge fan of the 2016 reboot Doom, and I'm an enthusiastic admirer of its harder and bigger sequel, Doom Eternal. So I was kind of excited to see what the folks at ID Software had cooked up this time, because where do you go with Doom anymore? Like, if you played Doom Eternal, that was kind of a definitive statement of what Doom is going to be now and forever. Well, apparently you go backwards. You go to the Dark Ages, and you give Doom melee weapons. That's new. Now, from the outset, it's clear that Doom's foundations are so immovable that even drastic changes to the core can't shake them. So, melee weapons like the flail or the new shield, and the semi-open world arenas, and even these new flying sections up on top of dragons, they all still feel quintessentially like Doom, like even as they jostle the Madness series into a new era. Now, for the purpose of the demo, as press, we got to play the first 4 sections of the game. The first one is the most narrative-heavy, and it does a lot to showcase how Doom has changed on this front. 2016, Doom made a gag about how little exposition the Doom guy wants or needs, most memorably at the start where he just interrupts a lore dump by punching the machine trying to bring him up to speed. And Eternal, on the other hand, went so full-on with the huge mythological sweeps of story and codex entries that I think it just felt a little clumsy in an already kind of bloated experience. Doom: The Dark Ages, on the other hand, based on the material that I got to see, seems to have found a healthy balance between the two. This is Doom at its most cinematic, bringing in mind the mix of animated films like Heavy Metal and the wacky, half-serious apocalyptic visions of Roland Emmerich. The setting is in the Middle Ages, or something close to it, because there's angels, gods, demons, and spaceships, and it looks like a cover of a Megadeth album most of the time. The Slayer is sent out to help humanity, but his main purpose is to wipe out the hordes of hell, and even if that costs him, some expendable lives in the process. There's a sense of helplessness in this mayhem that really makes the Dark Ages feel like it has some gravitas that made 2016's Doom so effective. It's very similar to Warhammer 40k, in that the vision of the future is beyond bleak. Millions and millions of people will die just for the Doomslayer to accomplish his task of wiping out the armies of hell. Now, the piloting sections are the biggest new addition, and they are kind of hit and miss. The Slayer picks up new weapons and all that, but it's really in flying with the dragon or piloting Doom's version of the Jaegers from Pacific Rim, the Atlan, that really stand out as the biggest swings that the franchise is about to take. I'm not entirely sold on these, mostly because the sections we got to play were kind of linear, and for example with the Atlan, it was nothing we haven't seen already in games like Titanfall, which it was done a lot better in that. It wasn't bad, and it was very showy, and there was a lot of fun in watching the buildings collapse and topple as you're walking over them, and punching a giant demon in the face. All fun stuff. But it's not entirely new, it's not entirely novel, and it just kind of feels like Doom is a little like trying to catch up with other games. And I can't really say yet how that is going to play out in the big picture once we get the full pacing going on. The dragon sections, on the other hand, are a little bit better once you get out of the very linear areas where you just have to kind of fly to a place, fight a static object, and then fly to another place, fight another static object. Once you get to the big combat area, where you're trying to prevent the warships from attacking the capital city, then it starts to feel like Panzer Dragoon, or something similar to that, and it's really fast-paced, it's really metal, and it's very silly. So, for example, you fly the dragon toward one of the enemy warships, take out all the cannons on the side, and then you drop off from your dragon into the heart of the ship to do a hugely fast-paced, frenetic, epic combat battle as you take down the entire ship from the inside, and then you come out of it flying onto your dragon once again to fly into another ship. It is bonkers, and it's so much fun. And I think that if more sections in the full game are going to be like that, it's going to play a lot better than the very linear corridor chases where you just fly forward to one place or another. The fourth area that we got to play was the largest of the bunch, and the one where I captured all the gameplay footage that is from me. This is one of the large open maps that sets Dark Ages apart from previous Doom titles. And while those two have featured open areas, the Dark Ages amps up the ante by, a huge measure. And, there were times when I actually found myself a little lost in the vastness, kind of just happily gazing at the landscapes and the scenery unfolding in the background. But I never felt bored or like that I was, going back and forth kind of aimlessly. There was constantly something to find. So every area comes with new mini-quests, like stopping siege weaponry from advancing, or hidden collectibles for fun and for profit, and there's just a constant sense that wherever you move, you are making progress. Enemies spawn in massive hordes, which at times was quite reminiscent to the unrelenting difficulty of Doom Eternal. There's this thing called moral encounters, which precede mini-bosses, so you have to beat the ever-loving hell out of a horde of demons before their boss starts to quake in its boots and loses armor, at which point you can attack him, so you just had to keep moving as fast as you can, taking out the smaller guys to make the big guy actually damageable before he kills you. And it's fun once you kind of get the hang of it, but I did find myself dying a fair few times before I actually did. Luckily, once you do get those combat mechanics into your spine, the game really rewards you for just pushing ahead and for being really aggressive. And I found an immense amount of joy in just throwing myself at the armies, because there's this whole thing that every time you punch somebody, it rewards you with new armor, and if you throw your shield, you get ammo, and you stagger enemies. You can even create chains where your shield will take out a specific type of enemy as you hit it, as you can see here. So there's a constant sense that no matter how you want to play, Doom the Dark Ages will accommodate that, and I really, really appreciate it. And as for the Slayer himself, I mean, he feels even heavier and grander than before. His footsteps shake the ground, and his falls create ripples that damage enemies, and he has this aura of a Frank Miller wet dream on acid, and it's a lot of fun. As for the weapons, they're new yet familiar, and you can tell a grinder is a machine gun even if it doesn't look the same, and the famous shotguns are back and they still pack a punch. Each weapon has an upgrade trail, meaning there's plenty of ways to play, but for me, I found that the new melee weapons were the funnest of the bunch. They're visceral, they're fast, and they're fun. The flail is just badass, and I could have easily played the entire game with them. And I think that would have been the major change that would have made Doom the Dark Ages really stand out. That, no guns, just a sword and a shield and the hordes of hell. I think that would have been so cool that my heart might skip a beat. We don't get that. We get a much more traditional Doom, and that's fine. I get that that's what the franchise is going to be. But, maybe a mod in the future. One of the new things I also got to take a look at, but not yet fully try, were the accessibility options, which ID Software has reworked even further. Those of you who are new, I'm an autistic gamer with cognitive disabilities, which means that while I love Doom as a series, I often struggle to master them because of their hectic nature. So I get really overwhelmed by too much audio, I get overwhelmed by too much stuff happening on the screen, and for the first time in the series' history, I think that Doom the Dark Ages really meets me halfway, and I didn't feel like I had to compromise to enjoy the action to the fullest. There's this whole host of settings for both audio and visual cues, including helpful pings that figure out when the strikes are going to happen, indicators to point out where the attack is coming from, and all of that is really just to make it more fun for everybody. You can still ramp up these things to such a degree that it's just insane. There's, of course, the permadeath function is back. You die, you have to start the entire campaign all over again. But you can now micromanage every single difficulty option, from the parrying windows to how much damage your retaliations take, how much armor the enemies have. It goes from a complete power fantasy where you just wipe out everything by looking meanly at it, to the thing where you are just an insignificant grunt who's going to get pummeled by every single enemy. And I think that's really great. I think that's one of the best things that the Doom the Dark Ages has clearly spent a great deal of time figuring out, because there's a really difficult middle ground in finding what is fun and infuriating and where that exact point between those two is. Now, as for the audiovisual part, we got to play Doom the Dark Ages on some very, very nice rigs, like, RTX 5090s, 4K screens, the works. Now, once I get my hands on it, I mean, I have an RTX 3070, so it's not a very advanced rig, it's very medium settings, and I'm going to be playing it on a 1440p monitor, but I'm just looking at this and looking at the way that the game runs at a steady 60 FPS, and with very, very smart decisions made in how the enemies disappear after you kill them, how the hordes of hell appear and disappear in general. It's all very well done, and I can see that this is just going to be really great no matter how you're playing on a console or a PC. Now, the soundtrack is composed this time by Brian Trifon and Brian Lee White. So we're not getting Mick Garris back, unfortunately, but from what I heard here, it's still an equally thrilling mix of, the kind of zen and sacrilegious soundtrack that you expect from a Doom game. It's a loud experience, but the sound mixing was very, very well made. Like, it's another element that I do struggle with, as mentioned, and at every point, though, I could still get a clear understanding of where I was. The music just keeps being balanced on a scale that I haven't seen in other games like this. Specifically looking at you, Call of Duty, which, can never get the sound mixing right. Now, Doom the Dark Ages was already on my radar because I love Doom the series, but again, I hadn't touched Doom since Doom Eternal. That's about 3 years now. Now, after spending about 3 hours with it, I can safely say that it's currently my most anticipated game of the year, because my anxieties of the difficulty or the series growing stale were completely vanished by the time I finished my demo with this. I just want to go back and throw my crazy shield around like some satanic Captain America, and I just want to go and take out the armies of hell in this gloriously over-the-top fashion. Do I wish that I could still just go ahead and play a completely melee character? Yeah, I do. And do I wish that the flying sections were better? Yes, and I really do hope that they appear to be better than they are in this demo. But at the same time, Doom is doing so many new things, and it's one of the last good, honest-to-God spectacles that emphasize a single-player experience, that at this point, I can't think of anything else like it that's coming out this year. Okay, maybe Grand Theft Auto, but really, we all know that's going to be an online game anyway. So when Doom arrives in May, I'll be the first in line to spend as many sleepless nights with it as the campaign takes, and I really expect great things from it now. Here's a little bit more gameplay, and we'll see you in May.